I noticed her when I was on the leg press machine. She was tall, probably around 5 feet 8 inches or 5 feet 9 inches, and looked to be around 125 pounds. Her blonde hair was tied back in a ponytail, and it was clear she was more focused on staying in shape rather than getting into shape. She was exactly the kind of person I enjoyed seeing in the circuit machine area, pleasant to look at, someone to admire while working out. After finishing my sets on the leg press, I moved on to the chest press to target my anterior deltoids and triceps. That's when I noticed her standing by the leg extension machine, looking a bit perplexed. I approached her. "First time here?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. "Have you used these machines before?" "No. I have a treadmill and a Stairmaster at home, but I've never used anything like this." "Are you looking to focus on a specific area or just a general workout?" "Just a general workout. The treadmill and Stairmaster don't do much for my arms and upper body. If you'd like, I can give you a quick tour and show you how to use the equipment." "Do you work here?" "Are you a personal trainer?" she inquired. "No to both. I'm just here for my workout, but I remember my first time here. If someone hadn't shown me how to use the equipment, I could have easily hurt myself." "I'm Rob," I introduced myself, extending my hand. "I'm Minerva, but I prefer to be called Minnie. And yes, I would appreciate it if you showed me around." I guided her through the circuit training area, explaining each machine, how to adjust the seat, select weights, and the muscle groups targeted. I mentioned that the machines were numbered for convenience and suggested she use them in numerical order to avoid overworking the same area repeatedly. They're arranged so you work different muscle groups sequentially. Machine 1 targets hamstrings, 2 focuses on triceps, outer delts, and pecs, and 3 works on quadriceps, and so forth. "Any questions?" I asked. "I'm sure I'll have plenty once I start," she replied. Minnie began her workout on machine number 1, the leg press, as I continued with my routine. I glanced back at her periodically to check on her progress. As I mentioned, she was easy on the eyes, and she seemed to be doing fine. After completing my workout and stretches, I was about to head to the showers when she approached me. "Do you come here often?" she inquired. "Every day, Monday through Friday. I'm here when the doors open at 5 in the morning," I replied. She glanced at the wall clock, which read 3:15, and exclaimed, "You've been here 10 hours?" I chuckled and replied, "No, I was out of town yesterday and flew in this morning, so today's a late day for me." "Nice meeting you, Minnie. Take care, and hopefully, I'll see you around," before heading for the shower room. As he headed for the shower, I decided that indeed he would see me around. I hadn't expected to find what I wanted so quickly, but he would do. Fairly good looking, obviously in good shape, no wedding ring, though that didn't necessarily mean anything, considering I had taken off mine. Yes, he would do nicely. As I watched his tight butt disappear through the door of the men's locker room, I reflected on the series of events that led me, a married woman, to this gym with the primary purpose of picking up a man, and maybe losing that extra 10 pounds I didn't want. But make no mistake, the man was what I was after. I met Brad when he started working at Chambers Brothers, where I was the office manager. He was charming, witty, and extremely good-looking, and when he asked me to have dinner with him, I said yes. It was a fun evening, and I agreed to a second date, which led to a third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. I'm not a prude, but I'm not promiscuous either, and I do enjoy sex, a lot, but I really have to like a guy before I give in, and I really like Brad, so on our 7th date, he got lucky. Besides Brad's other good qualities, he turned out to be an excellent lover. We became a couple, and for the next 4 months, we were inseparable. Then disaster struck. I got pregnant. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. I couldn't use birth control pills due to some bad side effects, so I relied on diaphragms, spermicides, and douching, but it seemed those methods failed me. It was my fault, not Brad's, since I had assured him I was protected. I did what I thought was right and broke up with Brad. After 3 weeks of pestering me for the reason for the breakup, I finally told him I was pregnant. He didn't ask, "Is it mine?" or "Are you sure I'm the father?" Instead, he suggested we hurry up and get married so the timing would look right when the baby was born. I told him we wouldn't be getting married. I wasn't going to have a husband who married me out of obligation. I admitted it was my mistake, and I would shoulder the responsibility. He stared at me for several seconds, then walked back to his desk and retrieved something from his briefcase before returning to me. He handed me a little box covered in black velvet and told me to open it. Inside was an engagement ring. I was just about to ask you to marry me when you ended things between us. We can get the license and blood tests out of the way by Thursday, see a justice of the peace on Friday, and have the weekend for a honeymoon. What do you say? What could I say but yes? It all went off as planned. 5 months into the pregnancy, I miscarried, and there were complications that ultimately left me unable to have children. Brad was a little disappointed because he wanted kids, but he reassured me, saying it was no biggie and we could always adopt. For 6 years, I believed I had a wonderful marriage and a loving husband. Then, I started to doubt that. Brad had left Chambers Brothers for a higher-paying job at McPhee & Sons, but to me, it didn't seem like a better position. It involved late hours and some traveling, leaving me alone at home with nothing much to do except watch mindless TV shows or read books. I didn't pick up any hobbies or activities because I wanted to ensure my time was free to spend with Brad when he was home. One day, Brad returned from a trip, and we attended a promotion party for one of his colleagues at the Marriott. It was my first time meeting the people he worked with. About an hour into the event, I needed to use the ladies' room. As I refreshed my makeup, I realized I had left my comb in my coat pocket. When I went to retrieve it from the coat room, I overheard a conversation outside. "Did you see Brad's wife?" "Yeah." "After seeing her, I wonder what he sees in Alice." "Do you think she suspects he's taking Alice to the motel for long lunches?" "I doubt it. She doesn't seem like the type to tolerate that crap." "Do you regret saying no when Brad hit on you?" "Alice says he's amazing in bed." "No, I don't regret it. I considered it because he's attractive, but I decided against it. There's no point in messing around with a married man." "Were you tempted?" "No, I have a good man at home. Even though Brad's a hunk, I'm not willing to risk what I have for someone who cheats like him." "I'm surprised Alice hasn't tried to befriend Brad's wife. You know, the 'see how nice I am' act. I'm pretty sure Brad's warned her and is keeping an eye on her. I wonder if her fiancé knows what she's up to." "Probably not. He's too infatuated with her to see anything else." I was stunned by what I heard. Brad cheating on me? It couldn't be true. There must be another Brad working there. I retrieved my comb and returned to the ladies' room. As I was washing my hands, a bold-looking blonde entered. She took out her lipstick, glanced at me, and said, "You're Brad's wife, right?" "Minnie, isn't it?" "That's correct," I replied. "I'm Alice. I work with Brad. We've worked on many projects together since he joined us. I think I've heard your name mentioned before. It's nice to finally meet you. Brad talks about you a lot when we're together." "You spend a lot of time together, I assume?" "Yes, we're often assigned to the same cost center, so we end up working on a lot of projects together." "It was nice meeting you, Alice, but I should get back to the party." As I left the restroom, I couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that perhaps there was truth to what those women had said. However, it wasn't until I returned to the table and mentioned meeting Alice to Brad that things took a turn for the worse. "She mentioned that you spend a lot of time together and have done a lot together since you started working here," I said to Brad. A flicker of concern crossed his face, suggesting that there might be some truth to the rumors. Throughout the night, Brad seemed nervous, glancing frequently at the table where Alice was seated. I couldn't help but notice others watching our table with knowing smiles. Did everyone know? Were they pitying me or admiring Brad for his audacity? On the way home, Brad was unusually quiet. When I asked if something was wrong, he brushed it off, mentioning he was just thinking about his career. I reassured him about his future promotions, masking my suspicions. Over the weekend, Brad wanted intimacy, but my doubts lingered. I complied, but my heart wasn't in it, and for the first time, Brad failed to satisfy me. On Monday, I took a few days off work to observe Brad's behavior. When he left for lunch with Alice, my heart sank. I followed them, torn between confronting Brad or accepting the truth. Ultimately, they ended up at a restaurant instead of a motel. I felt foolish and jealous, berating myself for doubting Brad. To relieve stress, I went shopping, as I always did. I visited several stores, including Victoria's Secret and Lane Bryant, to purchase some sexy clothes to surprise my husband and make up for my doubts about him. Despite Brad's assurance that he would be working late, I took time off to investigate further, driven more by guilt than suspicion. I waited outside his workplace, berating myself for doubting him. When Brad arrived home, I greeted him wearing a seductive outfit, determined to reignite our intimacy. The next day, I observed Brad leaving with his colleagues for lunch. Feeling conflicted, I decided to spice things up in our relationship and surprised him with a special dinner and intimate moments. The following morning, Brad mentioned another late night at work. I pretended to be understanding while secretly keeping an eye on him. To my dismay, I witnessed him entering a hotel room with his colleague, Alice, fueling feelings of anger and betrayal. As Brad and Alice continued their affair, I struggled with emotions of anger, hurt, and humiliation, realizing the depth of the betrayal. As I drove home, I formulated my plan for revenge against Brad. I decided to let him support me while I reduced the amount of sex I initiated and searched for my own lovers. While I would never refuse Brad's sex, I resolved not to be the one to initiate it. Sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of wine, I contemplated my next steps. I was determined to find a lover who could satisfy me both physically and emotionally, perhaps even shedding the extra 10 pounds I believed I was carrying in the process. The following morning, I arrived at the gym early with Bonnie and Debbie, two regulars. Minnie joined us, explaining that she preferred to work out before heading to work. As we headed to our respective workout areas, I couldn't help but notice Minnie's ringless finger, signaling a potential opportunity. While I exercised, I kept an eye on Minnie, contemplating when to make my move. Deciding not to waste any time, I approached her as she finished her workout and suggested grabbing coffee together. She agreed, and we made our way to a nearby IHOP, setting the stage for what I hoped would be the start of a new chapter in my revenge against Brad. As she settled into the seat across from me, I asked, "So, how do you feel after your first full workout?" "Not bad. My legs are okay, but my arms feel like they're made of lead." "Your arms just need time to adjust. Start with lighter weights for a couple of workouts and gradually increase them as you get used to it." "And that will take what, about 5 or 6 years?" "Oh, come on now, it won't be that bad. Didn't you mention having a treadmill and a Stairmaster at home?" "Yeah, but they also make me ache." As she sipped her coffee, I glanced at my watch and said, "I know you need to leave soon for work, so I'll cut to the chase. I'd like to get to know you better. How about dinner tonight?" "I'd like that, but I'm not sure if I can make it tonight." "Why don't you give me your number, and I'll check my calendar once I get to work." We finished our coffee, and she got up to leave. I couldn't help but admire her as she walked towards the door. If luck was on my side, I might just find out how tight that ass was. Feeling his gaze on me as I headed for the door, I couldn't shake the thought of Brad working late that night. I decided to call him as soon as I got to work to confirm. If he was indeed working late, I'd have dinner with Rob. Dinner, and perhaps more, depending on Rob. I didn't want to act recklessly, but I had chosen Rob as my revenge lover, and I was eager to proceed. Brad was already out when I got home, so I selected a bra and panty set from Victoria's Secret and slipped into a dress that accentuated my legs. I packed my sexiest heels in a tote bag, planning to put them on after work if I was meeting Rob. For work, I opted for flats. 10 minutes into my workday, I called Brad. "Do you remember if you'll be working late tonight?" "Yes, I will be." "Why do you ask?" "If you're going to be late, I might do some shopping. I saw something sexy that I want to try on." "Very sexy, huh? I can't wait to see it." I hung up on Brad and called Rob, confirming our dinner plans. As the day went on, my mindset shifted. Instead of waiting for Rob to make the first move, I decided to take control. I was ready to cuckold Brad and wasn't going to waste any time. Rob was waiting for me in the lobby when I finished work, and as I approached, he softly whistled and said, "Wow. What a difference from when you were in workout clothes." "You like?" I said, spinning around in my sexy high heels. "Oh yeah. You're looking good." "No, scratch that. You look fantastic." "Good enough to eat?" "What?" "Let's stop playing games, sweetie. I know what you want, and I want it too. Do you want to waste time having dinner, or would you rather get right to dessert?" When you put it that way, the decision is simple. My apartment is 30 minutes from here, and I don't want to waste 30 minutes. There's a hotel at the end of this block. We can be in a room in 10. Actually, it was 15, but who was counting? Rob was a marvelous lover, and he gave me several orgasms before I had to finally put a stop to the evening. I need to get going, lover. I need to beat my husband home. I saw the look that crossed his face and said, "Yes, sweetie, I'm married, but I won't let it get in the way of our having fun. I assume you'd like to do this again?" Silly question. When? It can only be on the nights that he works late or is out of town. How do you feel about being on call? It works for me. There's also the fact that this hotel is only 1 block from where I work, and I can take long lunches. Would tomorrow be a long lunch day? Absolutely. Meet me here as soon as you can. I'll already have the room when you get here. That will give us just a tad more time. I like a woman who thinks ahead. I kissed him and headed for home. As she left the hotel room, I wondered what kind of dim bulb she was married to that he couldn't keep her at home. She was intelligent, witty, easy to talk with, drop-dead gorgeous, and an absolute tiger in bed. In fact, she had so much going for her that if she wasn't married, I'd consider pursuing her with the idea of making it a permanent arrangement. And that was saying something, considering I had promised myself never again after the 5-year disaster that my marriage had been. Those 5 years with Annabelle had me swearing that I'd rather die than get into a long-term relationship again. Then along comes someone like Minnie. And she's married. Well, no one ever said that life would be fair. I'd been involved with married women before, and I knew that it usually didn't last long, maybe 4 or 5 months if you were lucky. But even if it was only for a short while, having someone as nice as Minnie around was better than having no Minnie at all. Who knows, maybe she would be different and our time together would last longer. One could only hope. I beat Brad home and was in bed, freshly showered and ready, when he arrived. I wasn't particularly excited about having sex with him, knowing that I was essentially getting leftovers from Alice, but I did want to give him what I had experienced with Rob. Plus, there was always the chance that he really would be working late tonight. I was lying naked on the bed, reading Stephen Frey's Forced Out, when Brad walked into the room. I put the book down, spread my legs, and said, "See anything you like?" He grinned and started undressing. I nearly had an orgasm when I guided his head down to eat me out, and I did have one while thinking about Rob as Brad fucked me. It was a very satisfying evening for me. At the gym door, chatting with Bonnie and waiting for Linda to unlock it, Minnie arrived. The 3 of us made small talk until Linda arrived. After checking in and grabbing towels, Bonnie headed for the stairs while Minnie leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Don't tire yourself out this morning, lover. You'll need your strength by lunchtime." No fair, a voice behind us interjected, "I saw him first, and I've known him longer." We turned to see Debbie standing there. Minnie looked at Debbie, then back at me, and said, "Oops." I smiled at Minnie and replied, "Ignore her." I gave her a chance, and she shot me down. "What did you expect?" Debbie retorted. "You hadn't shaved in a week, and what girl wants to deal with a hairy bear?" "That's not what you told me at the time," I teased. "You said your fiancé wouldn't like it." "Well, yeah, that too." The girls headed for their locker room, and I made my way to the men's locker room. After stowing my work clothes, I hit the treadmill for a 20-minute session at 5 miles per hour to get my heart rate up. Then, I moved to the circuit room. Minnie was in the free weights room with Bonnie and Debbie, and I had already completed 6 circuit machines by the time she joined me there. I finished my workout before she was halfway through the circuit, so I approached her as she finished her set on the shoulder press and asked, "Noon? Are we still on?" "You can count on it," she replied. "I'll already have the room, and I'll be waiting in the lobby for you," I told Minnie. "Did you take your vitamins this morning?" she asked. "No," I replied. "Better get some. I plan to be very active, and I would like it if you could at least try to keep up. All I can promise is that I will do my best." The hours at work seemed to drag on. The anticipation of meeting Minnie for a long lunch hour made time feel even slower. Finally, at 11:45, I left the office and informed the receptionist that I would be having a long lunch with a client if anyone inquired about me. In the hotel lobby, with the room key in my pocket, I saw Minnie walk in. We met at the elevator, standing there in silence, not acknowledging each other. To any observer, it would seem like we were strangers. When the elevator arrived, we stepped inside. As soon as the door closed, we embraced passionately. My hand was in her blouse, and she was pulling my zipper down. When the door opened on the third floor, we hurried to room 306. Once inside, it was a race to strip off our clothes. Minnie won, although she cheated by leaving on her nylons, garter belt, and heels. Minnie nearly exhausted me, leaving me wondering if I even needed to go to the gym with the workout she was giving me. As I rode the elevator down from the third floor, I reflected on the day. It had been quite revealing. It all started in the locker room with Bonnie and Debbie. While putting away my things, Bonnie asked, "Is Rob your first revenge affair?" "I beg your pardon?" I replied, taken aback. "I asked if Rob is your first revenge affair," Bonnie repeated. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I insisted. "Don't you recognize us? You really have no idea who we are? I don't believe I've ever seen either of you before I started coming here." "Well, we did look quite different in heels and evening dresses, but I thought you would recognize our voices. Tell me, does this sound familiar? Do you think she suspects that he is taking Alice to the motel for long lunches?" They could see from my expression that I finally understood what they were referring to. "Debbie and I saw you go into the coat room. You were meant to hear what we said. I'm betting you checked it out and found it to be true. Suddenly, you're here working out, and Rob has that well-fucked look on his face. So, is he your first revenge affair?" Bonnie asked. I looked from one to the other, shrugged, and admitted, "Yes, he is." Both of them nodded, and Bonnie added, "We dislike Brad that much, especially Alice. We despise her. And to be honest, I'm not too keen on Brad either. I can't stand a cheater. My ex cheated on me, and it destroyed our family. Our kids are still having trouble getting over our divorce." "I have the same basic problem," Debbie said. "My fiancé is now an ex-fiancé because I caught him fooling around with one of my former girlfriends." Recalling the conversation I overheard, I asked them if it was true that Brad had made advances toward them, and they confirmed it. They revealed that he had pursued almost every woman in the office, both married and single, and had succeeded with at least 3 others besides Alice. Then Debbie posed a question that caught me off guard. "Is Rob just going to be the first? Are you planning on seeking other lovers?" "Why do you want to know?" I replied. "Don't give me that," Bonnie interjected. "The truth is, she's had her eye on Rob since she broke up with her fiancé. What she really wants to know is if you're going to stick with him or move on, so she can make her move on Rob." I needed a moment to ponder that before admitting that I wasn't sure what my next move would be. I explained that I pursued Rob initially to have something to throw in Brad's face and hadn't considered seeking multiple lovers. It was something to mull over. Watching her sleep peacefully beside me, I noticed a faint smile on her face, and I hoped it was because of me. I had put an effort to ensure she enjoyed our time together. I couldn't comprehend her husband's foolishness in not doing everything to keep her by his side. The more time I spent with her, the more I wished she weren't married. The past 7 months with Minnie had been magical. She had changed my outlook on avoiding long-term relationships. I wanted her to be mine forever, although I couldn't express that to her. Our interactions hadn't suggested anything beyond a sexual fling that would eventually end, so I was cautious not to do or say anything that might hasten that end. I cherished every moment with her, from our long lunches to nights when her husband was away on business, and even the quickies after our gym sessions. I simply couldn't get enough of her. If I couldn't have her full-time, I hoped to have her part-time for the next few decades. I woke him up with oral sex, and once he was fully awake and aroused, I straddled him and guided him inside me. It was a wonderful way to start the day. Showering together, I had to resist his advances to avoid being late for work. Although I longed to return to bed, I had to stay focused. Later that evening, while Rob and I were engaged in intercourse, Brad called for his nightly check-in. Despite my efforts to handle the call, Rob continued, and I had to manage the conversation while still being intimate with him. The sensation lingered long after the call ended. Afterward, I tried to reprimand Rob, but he simply smiled, knowing I enjoyed it. We went to the gym the next morning, followed by breakfast, where I asked about our plans for a long lunch. He expressed his insatiable desire for me, confirming our lunch plans. On the way to work, I pondered how long I would continue seeing Rob before confronting Brad. Initially, my plan was to have a brief affair, confront Brad about his infidelity with Alice, and then propose working on our marriage. However, revelations from Debbie and Bonnie about Brad's other affairs made me reconsider. Upon discreet investigation, I learned about Brad's previous affairs during our marriage. It led me to question if I truly wanted to salvage our relationship. Giving Brad sex after being intimate with Rob became a satisfying way to express my feelings, ensuring I was always prepared for him, although my doubts about our marriage grew stronger. I was thoroughly enjoying the experience of cuckolding my husband, but a sudden realization struck me: I didn't want to let go of Rob. It left me in a quandary. What should I do now? With the room key in hand, I saw her entering the front entrance. Since our breakfast at IHOP, my perspective had completely shifted. Continuing my affair with Minnie was taking a toll on me mentally. I had come to acknowledge that I was deeply in love with her, and having her only part-time in my life was causing significant distress. My work performance was suffering as thoughts of Minnie consumed me constantly, even when I wasn't with her. I had no life outside of our encounters. When apart, I would sit in solitude, fixating on her and eagerly awaiting our next meeting at the gym. Although we had discussed our situation, she showed no inclination to leave her husband. Realizing that I couldn't continue in this manner, I knew I had to end it for my own well-being. I even contemplated changing gyms to avoid the pain of seeing her. As I observed her approaching the elevator where I stood, I understood the difficulty of the decision ahead. Brad entered the bedroom, towel-clad and still wet from his shower. As I slipped on my heels, I inquired about his dinner plans, and when he mentioned working late again, something inside me snapped. Picking up my purse, I calmly suggested he spend the night with Alice instead of rushing home, as I intended to spend the night at Rob's place. Perplexed, Brad demanded an explanation. I didn't mince words, revealing my involvement with Rob and sarcastically listing the other women he had been involved with. His reaction was one of disbelief, asserting that as a man, he was entitled to extramarital affairs while expecting fidelity from me. That statement took me aback, and its absurdity compelled a laugh from me. This is no laughing matter, Minerva. I refuse to have a prostitute as my wife, Brad asserted firmly. Still chuckling, I left the house. During the drive to work, I reflected on the events of the past 24 hours. I had met Rob at the motel, and we shared a passionate encounter. However, Rob surprised me afterward, expressing his feelings and announcing that it was our final rendezvous. I hadn't anticipated this, naively assuming he would always be available. Throughout the workday, I found myself in a gloomy mood without understanding why. Although I felt momentarily cheered while feeding Brad the remnants of Rob's affection last night, I struggled to sleep. At the gym this morning, Rob was nowhere to be found. Upon returning home, Brad's ludicrous justification for his infidelity elicited another bout of laughter. Work proved to be a struggle, my thoughts consumed by Minnie and the realization that our affair had come to an end. The incessant buzzing of my cell phone, each call from Minnie, added to my distress. As the morning progressed, my secretary informed me of an unexpected visitor for my supposed 11:30 appointment. Perplexed, I checked my schedule but found no such entry. Nonetheless, I welcomed Minnie into the office, uncertain of what to say. "Good morning." "Come on into the office," I greeted her, stepping aside to allow her entry before closing the door behind us. Facing me, Minnie interrupted before I could speak, raising her hand. "I overheard your conversation yesterday, Rob. But you're my friend, and friends stick together during tough times. I'll need someone to support me through this messy divorce and afterward, perhaps to provide comfort. Can I count on you to be there for me?" she asked earnestly. Write your opinion in the comments. Thanks for watching and have a great day.